Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of I Got Gameplay. I am your host, Michael Burhan, in this rather late episode because we've attempted to record this three times, and that's mostly my fault because I was having issues in terms of recording the episode in general. And that was mostly due to me trying to figure out how Zoom works because I'm a millennial, but I'm also old. And old people trying to figure things out, we tend to not do that by actually, asking for help. We try and do trial and error. And because of a lot of trial and error, I couldn't figure out how this worked. I finally think I've got it working to the point where we're now at a good level. So let me introduce you to our guest today. He is a working actor. He works mostly in voiceover, but he does film, television, and also stage. He is the awesome whovian himself, Cliff Chapman. So, Cliff, how are you today?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I just had a Friday of teaching, and because I live in China, we're having the May Day holidays. But for the Chinese, the way it works is you have to kind of do a trade. So I will get like a week off, but I still have to work this Sunday and next Sunday, just to basically balance things out. And it's quite of what I admire about the fact that they're always on the grind, but at the same time, I kind of just want a break, and I need a bit of a break because I'm on a bit of a mental burnout myself. So speaking of
Easy,
mental
Jonathan.
burn, yeah, speaking of mental burnouts, that's a nice little segue, I swear. Uh, Tell us about the industry that you're in. You're an actor by trade. You
Yeah.
make a living off of doing this. So how did you first get into acting in general? What brought your passions?
Well, I think there was a point where I really loved English and I loved music and I loved drama at school, and they took drama off the school syllabus at the school I went to. And I would have had to get up a whole hour earlier and travel the massive distance of about 14 miles to go to a different school if I wanted to do drama. And the problem is I grew up on the Isle of Man, where your sense of scale just comes right down. So, like, the other end of the island, literally 20 minutes in the car on a good day, is very, very far away. So I did drama in year seven, which for international people is age 10 to 11 at school. And then they took it off the syllabus, and I was hit by this wave of desperately needing to do it. And it wasn't just liking it, it was loving it. It wasn't just wanting to do it, it was needing to do it. And, I grew up watching an awful lot of Doctor Who. Reading books and Doctor Who magazine, where everything was analysed in great detail. There was a whole generation of people who'd been to university, studied English at degree and post level, and still loved Doctor Who. And of course, when you get a lot of people saying, "Oh, but Doctor Who's just for children," and it's not. It's a family show for the whole family. But you had this whole wave in the '90s, particularly, of very clever young academics, treating it like any literary text and any film and media text. And there was a lot of discussion about acting. And of course, many actors in Doctor Who appeared in several roles over the series. People got recast every few years sometimes, and they were often very different. And when they were the same, they were very good. And of course, all the actors who played the Doctor, pretty much most of them were in lots of other things. And it sort of so the childhood kind of love of Doctor Who, which is the adult love of Doctor Who as well, it's never gone. That basically sends you off on a little kind of collecting mission of, oh, I want to see as many things Patrick Troughton was in, or I want to see all these things that John Pertwee and Tom Baker are in, and Sylvester McCoy and Colin. And so you kind of, from a very young age, I was very excited by the idea of recognizing actors, seeing what they did, seeing how they were the same, seeing how they were different in other things. And also I skived school a lot. I was bullied a lot because I was more of a creative type than a sporty type, and a lot of people. Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You might have one best friend at school for a period of time, and you both like Doctor Who, and you read the Target novelizations that were in the library of all the old stuff that wasn't out on video yet, or the stuff that didn't even exist because it had been wiped in the 60s. And then, there's two or three of us played Warhammer for a bit, and so it was a bit of a thing. It became a passion. It became my sort of one of my sports substitutes, being really interested in acting. We did a school play in '96 when I was 14 for the anniversary of our school. Was it 50th or 80th or 100th, something like that? I don't know. We did Monty Python sketches, when I think I was still at the age. I don't think I'd seen a bit of Monty Python. I hadn't seen it all. I wasn't an expert on it, but you just, it's that culturally ingrained, this is classic comedy. And I did the cheese sketch, and that's how I know all of the cheeses to this day from doing the cheese sketch when I was 14 years old. And I sort of, my memory is not always perfect, but, I can memorize lines eventually. I'm not off book photographically immediately by any means. And then I joined a drama club. I went to, I kind of knocked around. I did a lot of amateur theatre or community theatre in the Isle of Man. There were loads of different theatre groups, and I acted, I directed, I stage managed. I was interested in most things. I kind of like singing karaoke, not so much stage musicals. So, I'm more pop than big ballads. So I didn't really do musicals, but I did most of it, and then I worked in banks, and I acted and directed in community theatre for a few years, and got very depressed because I wasn't like senior in bank. I wasn't like a banker making hundreds of thousands a year, or even necessarily tens of thousands a year. I was customer service, and I was bored, and everybody just liked football and golf, and that's all they ever talked about, and it was boring.
It's
And
usually the way, like it's the British pastime with football. I know my students go, so what team do you support? And I'm like, I don't.
well, the thing is, I used to tell myself I hated football. I don't actually hate football. When lockdown was on and the World Cup was on, we literally watched the World Cup for something to do, and kind of got into it a little bit. And of course, I live in the Netherlands now, and the Dutch team are spectacularly charismatic and entertaining, and they can be quite good. I don't think they're necessarily very disciplined, but there's me talking like a football pundit, like, oh yes, I know my football. It's like, they're good lads, they're great lads, they're not very disciplined, but they'll give you a good entertaining day. So yeah, I kind of it's a bit of fun in the right kind of time, but I didn't have that dad that was into football that was telling you all that kind of thing. Anyway, so I sort of found drama on my own. There's no one particularly I was going to say there's no one particularly dramatic in my family. Of course, there's very dramatic people in my family, but not necessarily theatre types. Anyway, and so I was bimbling around in banks and hated it. And my dear late lamented friend Kate Hegarty, who passed away a couple of years ago, which was very, very sad. She was in the drama classes at the school I went to. She literally moved schools. She went to the effort of moving schools. And then she went off to university, and then she went off to drama school. And when things were going really kind of boring and rubbish in my job, and I was saying how much I hated it all the time, and I was sick a lot. Sick. And she said, come to drama school. And I was like, I never afford it. I never have that kind of money because, I spend my money on DVDs and toys. But she was like, oh, it's a cheap drama school, there's a scholarship audition, give it a go. So I went for a scholarship audition, and I didn't get the scholarship. Somebody else who was better than me, who didn't dry on the improv and who did a proper introduction to their monologue, they got it, and well deserved. They were good. And then the person who ran the drama school said, you were very good, pay us when you can, which was incredibly kind. And so in 2009, I kind of left the Isle of Man and banking and moved on to kind of give acting a go properly, because you did your list of when I lose my job in an office, what do I do? What do I like doing? What am I good at doing? What could I make money out of? Well, I like doing it. And sometimes I'm quite good at it, I hope. I don't necessarily know whether I make enough money out of it yet, but I've paid my rent a few times from acting, which has been the dream. And I know Yeah. So I did a few years of bimbling around in doing fringe things. I did a lot of theatre in education, working with kids, doing like Knights and Princesses, teaching archery at Hever Castle, which was fantastic, which was like the best job in the world when you're looking for other work. Father Christmas experience, kind of trail walks, all that kind of stuff, working in escape games, also selling wine and food in a call center with other actors, with other creatives. So just kind of trying to stay in the world even if I'm not working. And then, yeah, I got a few voiceover jobs early on, a lot of fringe theatre, lots of sci-fi and fantasy, which I loved very, very much, and I'm passionate about it and, could always give my best. And yeah, a few commercials happened. I got an agent very quickly because when I left drama school, one of the alumni from the drama school had trained there as an actress. And so she'd set up an agency and she took me on straight away. That was Trish from Meredith Westwood. She was incredibly kind and lovely. And she put me forward for loads and loads of commercials. I had a period of a couple of years where I was being seen for commercials, sometimes 2 or 3 a week, which was incredibly exciting. And it's a lottery, it's kind of, and you quickly kind of get the kind of types of what sort of type of people they go for. And of course, I was very poor, so I was possibly a little bit desperate. And, there's sometimes in the industry, given a choice between someone who really, really needs the money to pay the rent for a few months and someone who's actually very relaxed and calm and it doesn't really matter. And this might go on a holiday or something. They
Well,
might
that's
choose the
one
calm,
thing
relaxed
that I
one.
wanted to ask you actually about this because I find that a lot of people have a misconception of how the industry works. They think we're all rich, right? I have like a 20-year career in drama and theater, and I made money, but it wasn't like exuberant amounts. And I think the given is they think that we're as actors we're supposed to be like super rich, super famous, like we're supposed to be on the level of the big tier guys, but we're really not. And usually it's just grinding because that's you're going from one job to the next and trying to find your kind of in a way you're finding your golden goose, and a lot of it is to do with luck. Sometimes you can get through the door because your face fits, but then the rest of it requires, is there chemistry between you and the other actor? Is the did the casting director think you're right? Did the director have someone else in mind? Did they take a second look at you and go, actually, that's not what I'm looking for? Because I remember Patrick Stewart said of a story where he ended up being cast in Dune, like the first iteration of Dune, not the ones we have now with the weird
Mm.
popcorn bucket. We we he was cast, and I remember he was saying that the director, after he was cast, he cast him based on the fact that he saw him in a wig and thought he'd got this guy with like long flowing hair. And then when he ended up seeing bald Patrick Stewart, he was a bit disheveled in a way,
Mm.
a bit annoyed about it as well. He ended up apologizing to Patrick after they wrapped, because Patrick Stewart didn't know what he did wrong. Like he literally went to meet the director and the director just gave him the cold look, but didn't say
Yeah.
anything to him. And I remember Patrick was like, it's in his book, by the way, guys. If you haven't read the book, I'm listening to the audio version on Audible at the moment. It's called Make It So. But he does talk about similar things that I believe you and I have gone through as actors. Now, how did you manage to kind of move in the direction of becoming a voice actor? Because as I said, a lot of what you're prominently known for is voice acting work, especially with places like Big Finish, and also you did like the Sandman Audible book as
Yeah.
well. So why don't we start with Big Finish? How did you start with Big Finish? What happened there?
Okay, well, I'll try and keep this as brief as possible. It's a slightly circuitous route, but basically, big Finish fan from very early on. I think by their third release, I ended up ordering the first three releases back when they got their Doctor Who license back in 1999. So that was Sirens of Time, Phantasmagoria, Whispers of Terror, and I literally ordered them from a shop called Galaxy 4 in Sheffield that I could speak to over the phone back in the day. This was still, Amazon was a baby, and there was Play.com and there was Jungle.com and all these kind of online websites. But I was still in the cusp of, kind of ordering these CDs personally, giving my card details over the phone. And yeah, for 10 years, the first 10 years of the Big Finish Doctor Who audio dramas, I collected them as a fan. And you sort of build up online contact. You see people on forums as a fan, and you get chatting to them. And then, of course, when Facebook kind of really exploded, it was 2007 when suddenly I hadn't heard of Facebook one day, and then suddenly everybody's on it the next. And you just kind of collect people like Pokemon on Facebook at the start. It was kind of like Twitter. You just follow anyone and most people will add you back. I've got politicians on my Facebook to this day. Don't really interact with them. I just sort of see who would add me back.
It'd be funny
So
if you
it
had
was
like David Cameron on your timeline and you're just calling him like
not
a
those
pig
politicians.
rapist or something.
What do you think I am? Uh, no, no, I
An
better not say.
undercover conservative. We all know it, Cliff.
No, 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 no. I did meet Ken Clark once in a recording studio for a Big Finish. He was doing his audio book for his biography, and he was very relaxed and very pleasant. There was a very ebullient American actor. We were sort of saying he was chatty. He was just kind of being quite friendly and passing the time of day in between, when we were in the green room. And I sort of said, he's the Tory that's okay to like, isn't he? He seems a nice chap, I suppose. And then so we did a bit more recording and had another break, and our breaks crossed again. Fellow actor says, Ken, we were just saying you're the Tory it's okay to like. And he was like, oh, I get that a lot. And it was nice. And when I'm walking my dogs
Well, at least he's in on the
the
joke.
heath. And that was lovely. And then like years later I read his book. And of course I'm a little bit too young to remember. And then I sort of read about like health secretary stuff and all this other stuff that he'd done. As like, oh no, he's not that nice either. But it won't make. I think he's better. I think he's a nicer person in older kind of thing. Anyway, that was a massive
So
digression.
yeah. So
How did I get
speaking
into?
of Big Finish, how did
Yeah.
you get into it? Like, how did you even start? Like, if I went up to them today and said, "Hey, I'm looking to kind of join the ranks of Big Finish," I don't think they would pay attention to me. So, what
Well,
what happened here?
this is the thing. It's with a lot of acting. It's it's a group of things that all happen at the right time, and it's multiple
Yeah,
factors. So first of all, you've got to be good. You've got to be trained. You can't just wake up in the morning and say, "Oh, people say I've got a nice voice. I'm going to be a voice actor now." You do have to use it. You do have to. I mean, we had very intense voice classes in drama school, which I absolutely loved. We had a bone prop in our mouth, a little plastic thing that could keep your teeth apart so you could articulate better. We had all the kind of phonetics information, breathing, extensive breathing, unlocking your chest, so there's all
ha
that
ha
kind of
ha
stuff.
ha.
Yeah. Mom, many men, many men, many men, many men, all that kind of stuff. For more, you can pay for classes. It's not you, you're
Subscribe
not.
to his
Uh,
very private website.
like and subscribe, guys.
Yeah, it's
No,
so private. Even Cliff doesn't know where it is.
yeah, no. I actually do one-on-one like Skype and Zoom coaching, like a tailored sort of thing.
Hmm.
If anyone wants it, but I digress. So yeah, so you kind of have to put the work in to be good,
Yes.
and that's a little bit beyond having a nice voice, and then you have to be fundamentally, I was going to say you have to be fundamentally nice on social media. Sometimes I'm a proper grump and the thing, but I think I'm passionate. I think the people who matter kind of understand when I'm kind of talking
Yeah.
about the thing. I think a lot of the time people know what I'm talking about, and if it's complete nonsense they say, oh well, he's probably just drunk, it's he's all right. So yeah, there's a little bit that you've kind of got to be, to a degree, networking in, and not just networking in a sort of friending people and then saying, "Can I have a job?" Don't friend producers and then send them their CVs, and
There
send
is a
them
lot
your
of people
CV.
who do this because I remember
Yeah,
that when I was a budding actor, like this is way before the internet became a huge thing with that. I used to send cover letters to people because I was
yeah.
told that that was the thing, because
It
everyone tends to
it was
teach their
tradition.
variation of, yeah, like it
Yeah,
was everyone has a variation of what they believe
yeah.
works.
I
And
mean,
I think like back in Patrick Stewart's day to where we are now, things have changed a lot, really drastically in a sense. And I remember you said something on Facebook about like people only casting the same few faces in terms of that. But for you, it was way different in terms of how you got into where you are.
well, that's the thing. I mean, again, 20, 30, 40 years ago, you could just kind of cold contact because there weren't so many of us. There's an awful lot of
Mm.
producers and directors who love actors and are desperate to cast actors and desperate to cast them over and over again enough to make a living out of it. But there are just so many of us, and because an awful lot of people wake up in the morning and say I'm going to be a voice actor, and they'll blag it, and they might well get very good eventually through practice and things, but but they might not be trained. They might burn some bridges. So producers and directors, sometimes, they're slightly overconfident people who don't turn out to be very good. They might get their fingers burnt, so they want people they know. They build up contacts naturally. They make friends with people. They don't want to disappoint friends. They want to find work for people that they like as well.
Yeah.
So it's very hard getting started. And I say my route into Big Finish was, I knew the company very, very well. I bumped into a few people, actors, producers, and directors over the course of conventions, over online discussion, the chat room at
Mm.
Outpost Gallifrey as it was then. We used to shoot the breeze, sometimes a little bit drunk on a Friday night, drink in moderation, kids. Um, and and yeah, so it's kind of very slow sort of build up, and you have to kind of let people know that you're not insane over a period of time. They have to know
We
that you're
try.
well, yeah, you're kind of stable or mostly stable, that you're trustworthy, that you can do the job, that you will be available, that you won't let them down as well. There's an awful lot of people who will go in all guns blazing saying, cast me in this thing, cast me in this thing. And I've had directors say, well, then I got in touch with them and they weren't available for 3 months because they were off doing another thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
I'll remember them now, but, ask me to remember them in a year. And a lot of it is recency and like kind of being aware and kind of being genuine friends, not just kind of you're like, I don't want to just fling my CV at you. I'm going to pretend to be your friend and then fling my CV at
Fair
you.
weather friends.
Take
Yeah.
it's follow people's work, respect people's work, know a bit about their work. And that's kind of happened for me on multiple occasions. To get into Big Finish, to answer your question, I was Facebook friends with a composer for Big Finish, and that was mostly because they shared really cool art on groups, and we
Hmm.
became friends that way. They asked if I would be interested in them using their music for my short film that I made, except I didn't make it. I was only an actor in it. And I told the producers, well, I'll certainly pass your details on. And the producer said, oh, that's very nice, but we've already got our music sorted, thanks. And he was very kind and said, well, that's very kind for you to try. We'll keep trying, and I'll pass your details on as a thank you anyway, because you took the effort to recommend me. So it's a kind of people who are skilled and talented at what they do recommending each other and giving that seal of approval. So I had a composer recommendation. I also had at least one actor recommendation from a friend who I'd known for very many years, who we'd seen each other's work. We were very familiar. So I think, with
Mm.
Doctor Who, the fan base is so critical. I know. I'm part of the fan base as well. But so you're an actor first when you do it. But you kind of, you have to sort of see from the point of view of it. If they, they might have dozens and dozens and dozens of roles over the course of a year. Um, but they have to be aware of a very critical fan base, so they need to make sure you're good, and that's being skilled, being reliable, being okay to work with. So it's all this kind of confluence of things, and having a good show reel, having other work. I worked for Phantom Audio, which is kind of Doctor Who related. They do Doctor Who conventions, they do books, biographies of Doctor Who stars, a lot of that kind of stuff, and their own stuff as well. One of my first jobs was a little audio with them, and out of the blue I ended up at Comic-Con. I thought, just as a guest, they would get me in for free and I could knock around as a fan because I knew them. But I was actually in the audio. I was at a table signing things, and I ended up sitting on a panel of several people. I said a little bit, and a couple of people got my autograph, even though they didn't know who I am, but they knew I was in here, so they were learning who I was. And there was this. There's you're sort of balancing the imposter syndrome, and it was quite
Hmm.
exhilarating. It was quite anxiety inducing in a way. But lots of people in cosplay, huge venue. I'd been to small conventions as a Doctor Who fan, back in the 90s when it's in a hotel in Coventry or Llandudno. So this was something else. And yeah, and so that was a little early kind of bit of excitement. And then, of course, you go a few years where nothing really happens again. So yeah, the other thing to remember is patience. So you get into the mindset of when you get a really good job, like I got my first big finish in 2016 on the back of doing a games workshop earlier that year for something I had auditioned for something else that had fallen through.
Yeah.
I think I was going to do it, but it had fallen through in 2015. And then I got this other part. I
Hmm.
was told as well, one of the factors in me getting Games Workshop was because I was in a production of Titus Andronicus on the stage. And there are very few Shakespeare plays that are more Warhammer, like pure Warhammer, than Titus Andronicus in terms of the brutality, the military, the factions, all that kind of stuff. So that was a little
Yeah, that
conflict.
was very polarizing for me. I remember watching that at the National, and I remember watching every moment in that play because it was part of my drama degree to watch this play and comment on it. And the first scene they had was when the guy kills a baby.
Yeah, yeah, and the chopping off of the hands, the brothers, the incest. It's Titus Andronicus is the origin of the your mum joke. So like, villain, you have undone our mother. Villain, I have done your mother. That's a your mum joke, which is amazing. But then yeah, it's all Game of Thrones. The I remember doing Titus and kind of going, how much of Titus Andronicus is in Game of Thrones? George R. Martin draws on Titus a lot.
Probably a lot,
Um,
to be honest. It's
yeah,
very
yeah,
incesty molesty, so you've
and
got that
graphic
kind
and
of. I think the
yeah,
context is it's definitely there. Maybe inspired by would probably be a better word, so no one gets sued on that part. But
George
in
Martin
in
is not going to
terms,
get sued. But yeah,
this is true.
I know what you mean. Sorry, go on.
But it's in terms of like your career path. So you got all these roles. You've done various things. You got made connections in order to get to where you were. So when did the Doctor Who stuff start coming in? Because you were doing like Blake Seven and stuff beforehand, right? And then you moved directly into Doctor Who afterwards.
Well, it was again, I did Pathfinder Legends, and I know my Warhammer. Shamefully, I didn't realize that Pathfinder Legends was a whole role-playing game system. Because what confused me was that there was a BBC sci-fi series called The Pathfinders with Gerald Flood, which was commonly, I've never seen it, but it was commonly referenced in Doctor Who books as one of the early inspirations that kind of led to Doctor Who. It's like, where there was Pathfinders in the 1950s, and then Doctor Who was an influence, that influenced Doctor Who. So I thought Pathfinders, being Big Finish, having done Doctor Who, was going to be this 1950s sci-fi revival. And I was like, oh, it's like Warhammer. And that was really embarrassing because it was one of those things I really should have known because I know a bit of role play games and stuff. But anyway, so yeah, and that was my friend Ian. So I did Games Workshop. I got the part on Games Workshop. It went very well. I got another one and another one, and I was staying in hotels in Nottingham and working with fantastic actors and having the time of my life and not being typecast anymore. I wasn't like the geek or the friend in a commercial. Finally, I got to be different things because it's just voice. And that's always what I wanted. I never wanted to just be me. And, even at drama school, the roles that we had in the plays when we were working at drama school, they said, be prepared to not get these kind of parts when you go out in the field. This is partly to test you and partly to kind of get you used to what you're doing. But also, we're going to give you something that you probably won't have because you'll
Did you
get
get given the
typecast.
the whole character actor speech as well? Like, because I was told there's two types of actors: Shakespearean actors, thespians, and character actors. And I was given the whole speech that I'm a character actor and I should always stick to being a character actor.
Oh,
Then I
yeah, I was.
listened to Patrick Stewart's book and he was just like, I was told I was a character actor, and then I ended up being one of the big Shakespeare actors. So I was like, ah, okay. It's not
Yeah,
set in
I mean, I,
stone then.
I was told I had an interesting face, which is, the nicest way of telling you you're ugly, and
Yeah, the same,
interesting
same.
face,
Interesting face. Yeah.
and that I would be character parts. But of course, the thing is, with casting, having moved into like street casting, and having, you kind of have to be pretty much who you are for most of it because they say, well, there's so many actors around that we're not going to have an English person playing a Scottish character, for example, or we're not going to necessarily um, mix anything up too much. We're kind of, for very obvious good reasons, we're going to try and cast the right person for the right character, if you know what I mean, in a
Also,
lot
like
of
local
ways.
talent for local roles in a sense as well. Like I think the industry has changed enough now that they're like saying, well, I think recently I heard of the character Jubilee in the new X-Men 97 is not the same voice actress. She stepped down in order for an Asian actress to assume that role because
And
she
that makes
felt
sense.
that, yeah, and it does make sense to a certain extent, I think. But I
Mm,
do think there is this whole idea of acting is acting. And there is a bit of there's a hot button debate at the moment where they're saying that a lot of LGBTQ plus roles should be by LGBTQ plus people, um, and like trans roles should be trans people. But then I don't like the have the feeling of typecasting in a sense.
mm.
I do think you can't have someone put like brown face on anymore and pretend you're Judah
Of
Ben-Hur,
course
you
not.
know?
No, no. I
Yeah,
mean, this is this is the eternal struggle of being desperate to have missing episodes of Doctor Who turn up, but then you just know that quite a lot of them will be problematic. There will be white actors in makeup, and it will be
yeah.
sad and awkward. And there's a time thing, and again, in the past, kind of people were, trying to be progressive in their own way sometimes, and I think, yeah, there's an argument to be said that playing a character that's very different to yourself, not like cross race casting or kind of anything like that, but just playing something that's kind of out of the box for you, but also achievable, is a really good way of teaching people empathy. Kind of teaching people how to deal with certain things. Playing a villain is fascinating because you don't play a villain and think I am a villain. You play someone who believes what they believe, and then
Well,
you
that's
kind
what I
of
say.
build
Like nearly
value.
every villain's intention is justified, right? It comes
Yeah.
from a place of justification because, like, there's always those memes of people like, "Oh, well, the villain starts to make sense," and it's like they're supposed to make sense. It's
Mm.
another like they've got conviction in what they're supposed to be doing. If you're a villain and you don't have conviction, you're not really a villain. You're just someone trying to play a character, and it comes off really crap, basically.
Yeah.
Because you
And
don't
yeah,
believe in anything you say.
I got to play a villain in Blake Seven and in Doctor Who. A
Yeah.
part. I played four parts in. It's one release, but it's like an anthology, so each part is kind of separate in a way. They're linked, yeah. So basically, I played various cyborgs, various characters, humans, space marines, Cadians in Warhammer, and it was one of those confluence of things. I finally got to work with my friend Ian Brooker, who's Wayne Foley on the Archers, absolutely fantastic voice artist. He played dozens of characters in Big Finish, and we met face to face. We were friends online. We used to chat in Outpost Gallifrey chat room, and then we were Facebook friends. I'm not entirely sure he had his photo on Facebook, so I think the first time I met him was the first time I knew what he looked like, because he's quite
Are you
private.
still Are you still friends? Because you said we
We
were,
we
so
Oh, no, no, we're still friends. Yeah, he's great. He's
oh, okay.
no, we were. I was just sort of saying we would chat in there, and then we became Facebook friends early on. And then I met him in real life, and so he became a real person instead of a digital person that lived in my computer. And yeah, so we did this
It's always great
Warhammer.
when you meet your online friends, especially if
That's
they're like a hero of yours.
Yeah, and working together. He's such a good actor. He's such a nice, kind of gentle, quiet, but very funny man as well. And he sort of said, "Oh, you've done a Big Finish by now, surely, Cliff?" And I said, "No, I'm kind of tapping on the doors every so often. I message a director, or I kind of have maybe a way in." I did an audition in 2015 to play a classic villain that had come back because a friend of mine was one of the writers, and he said, maybe you could have a shot at this, which was very kind. And someone quite famous got the part in the end, and I didn't mind, because it's like that's a very well
Well,
known
they're
person.
famous. It's like it's
And then,
always going to be the draw,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
like even if you're right for the part, that person
and
has
like
some sort of fan base behind them.
yeah, cult TV famous. I mean, it's not like Benedict Cumberbatch played it or anything, but yeah, I mean, someone very good who was in a lot of classic TV, and that was cool. But anyway, so basically, Ian sort of said, "Surely you've done Big Finish by now." And I said, "No, I keep tapping at the door, but it's lovely to do this, and maybe one day." And he says, "Well, I'm doing a Pathfinders in a few weeks. I'll mention you. If there's any casting left." And this is the luck thing. It's the fact that maybe it wasn't quite cast, and then this name comes up, and they listen to the show reel, and they go, Oh, actually, yeah, all right. And so it's luck. And so that conversation, that recommendation from Jamie as well, it all built up. And so I played this character. And when I first got the script, I was so excited to be in Pathfinder Legends for Big Finish. Having researched it and looked at what it was and understood it now. And then I saw the parts were guard. What's it? Guard, thief, and scream. So I thought, okay, if they're not named characters, the first two are going to be like a couple of scenes, and then Scream is just going to be a scream, right? Because I say I'd researched Pathfinder Legends, I knew a bit about it. So I went through the script, and it was a very long script. And I found the thief part, and that was a few lines. I was like, yep, okay, fair enough. And then I found the guard part, and that was a few lines over 2 or 3 pages. And I was like, yeah. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's it then. And then I wonder where I scream. Let's go through the whole script and find out where I do a death curdling scream. Because I'm quite good at doing a death curdling scream. And then I found out that Sebastian Scream was an actual Pathfinder Legends character of note. Like, people would know who he was. And yeah, so he'd been kidnapped. So you're reading through, and it slowly sort of dawned on me that they're looking for Sebastian Scream. And so when he does turn up, he has loads to do, and he's mad, he's an artist, and he's terrified. And so I got loads to do, and I absolutely loved it. And then so I did more I did more games workshops, and then so it was 2 years. Pathfinder Legends was 2016. I did loads and loads of games workshops, and sort of said, I'm open to more Big Finish. I'm open to that, and it's not really like a hierarchy. I mean, they're both very big companies. They both treat you very well. They both have huge fan bases and everything. So it's not, in my mind, it's like I absolutely loved Warhammer as a teenager, but also Doctor Who is my personality from the age of 3.
So it's
So there
it's
was
basically more about the how can I say, they focused a lot more on one side were it's more about the Warhammer stuff, and then the other side they have a number of licenses, right?
Games Workshop are completely separate to Big Finish, so they are an
No, no, I
operation
mean
in.
like for
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
Pathfinder series, yeah.
Oh,
So the
the
Pathfinder
Pathfinders,
was
yeah. So
mostly, yeah,
this is a range. Each of the ranges have their own producer, and they do their thing.
yeah.
And yeah, so basically, I got a call a couple of years after saying, would I like to do a Blake Seven? Um, may I pause for a second, just to turn something off?
Yes, three, two, one, go, 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 go.
And so
Three,
yeah, hello. Sorry
two,
about
one
that.
sec, one sec, one sec, one sec, one sec. Three, two, one, go.
Okay, so then I was offered Blake Seven in 2019. So it was this wonderful email that came out of the blue saying, would you like to do a bit in Blake Seven for these audio dramas? They're continuing the characters, various sort of other characters, because a lot of the Blake Seven stars had passed away. And Oh no, in fact, no. The first one was, yes, it was the restoration part two. So basically, would I do a Blake Seven? And the thing is, at the time, I was very busy because I was directing a production of Communicating Doors for my old Amdram group in the Isle of Man. They said
Mhm.
we get a professional director in every so often to do like a really big production, and we pay them. And I did loads of shows with them back in 2001, 2002, up to 2009, and they said, "Do you want to apply for this opportunity? And you can set your price, and we'll pay for your flights coming back to the Isle of Man." I was like, "Hell yeah, that's a dream job!" And they said, "Well, we're thinking about doing Alan Ayckbourn Communicating Doors," which was a play I knew, and it's about a time traveling dominatrix. Who's going to say no to that? It was delightful and fun, very funny and very good, very Moffat, very timey-wimey. So anyway, so I'm back and forth to the Isle of Man. It is 2019, so bear in mind this is before COVID, and suddenly I get to see
Mhm.
my mum a lot as well, which later on was a great benefit. So I didn't need a hotel. And anyway, I get an email out of the blue saying, "Would you like to be in Blake Seven Restoration?" I was like, "Of course I would. Yes, please." And then I looked at the dates, and one of the dates was when I was supposed to be in the Isle of Man. So I immediately like messaged the producer of the play in the Isle of Man and said, "I've got a little bit of work, and I really can't say no. How would you feel if I literally paid for my own new flight and basically came back the following weekend for this little run?" And they were like, "Do what you need to do. It's absolutely fine." So I basically took this role on a Big Finish. The fee, and they pay nicely.
whilst
They look after
directing
you.
whilst directing your thing as
I
well
was
at the
doing
same time.
communicating doors as well. And basically, my kind of flights back and forth to the Isle of Man kind of wiped out the fee, but that was not because doing Blake Seven was an absolute joy. Because as a Doctor Who fan, you kind of Blake Seven was one of the few TV series that used to get mentioned in Doctor Who magazine because they would review the Blake Seven videos as well. Because there were
Mm.
so many writers, producers, directors, and actors who'd been a thing. It was kind of it was seen as the unofficial spin-off of Doctor Who in a way, even though they never kind of glued their universes together because it was created by Terry Nation. It's produced by David Maloney, who directed a lot of classic Doctor Who, like Genesis of
It
the
was aired on
Daleks
the,
and stuff.
the BBC as well, right?
It was the BBC, yeah. So it was for older
Yeah, yeah.
people, nominally adult, but there was so much in terms of children's marketing because
I
sci-fi is for
can't
kids.
remember. Yeah, I can't remember if I watched it or not, but I'm aware of it. But I
Yeah, I
can't
mean,
remember if I watched it. It wasn't one of those things that kind of stuck, but that was
yeah,
because I was going through the time as a kid. We had so much sci-fi as a kid. Buck
yeah.
Rogers, the $6 billion man, all that stuff.
Mm. And it was a spectacular influence. I mean, it was named as an influence on George Martin for Game of Thrones because Blake Seven wasn't frightened of killing its leads from time to time.
Mm.
It would do a shock death of someone that you'd assumed would survive to the end quite often. And
It's always a good thing though, because if you're not scared to kill off the main cast, it's always going to have a little bit of a shock as long as you don't do it regularly and desensitize people to it.
exactly, and they don't do it till season two, and then they kind of drip it through the rest. But spoilers, go and see it. If you've not seen it, it's a bit like Firefly. It's a bit like Farscape. It's kind of the inversion of Star Trek, where the Federation is bad, and these are a bunch of freedom fighters. A little bit kind of like various Star Trek factions possibly, and it's cheap. It's BBC sets and very very basic video graphics, but it's very, very good. It's very beautifully acted in some places and very entertainingly, fruitily acted in others. And so, yeah, so basically, so I knew it very well and I managed to make the dates work. So I adjusted it at a little bit of expense, but I was fine with that because I was excited. And then I went on to the Sound House in Acton to record, and there was a lovely lady that I knew from script reading groups, or two actresses who are superb, or actors who are superb, um, and yeah, they were great, and it was just a very very happy day, and also um, yeah, so sorry, I'm just blanking for a second.
That's
Um,
okay. It's totally
Steve,
understandable. Like when
sorry,
you're going
so
through
yeah, so
everything and then you're trying to recall something.
yeah,
So
so
yeah, you're saying the
what was kind of exciting? So you had the idea of this story was it was two of the characters from Blake Seven had gone off and had an adventure. So it was Avon and Tarrant, and Stephen Pacey was there, and he was a lovely guy, and he did that kind of very funny actor thing. I was like, oh, of course I don't understand a word of what's going on, and me being like kind of nervous, and it's like, oh well, actually it's because of this, and then it's like, oh no, wait, that's the thing that actors say to be funny. Of course he knows what he's doing. He's a brilliant actor. So, but apart from that, he was lovely. He was very, very nice. Really, really good actor. And Paul Darrow played Avon, but he wasn't there because he was quite poorly, which was very sad.
mm.
And So we recorded that first Blake Seven, and then within a few days or a week or so, there was the news that Paul Darrow had passed away, which
Oh
absolutely
dear.
broke my heart because I kind of sad not to meet. I'd seen him at a convention, I'd not really properly met him, um, and then I kind of thought, oh, Blake Seven and Paul Darrow's passed away. It's not going to happen because they're not. Then it might in a few years they might after a period of time get a sound alike in, but they're not going to release it very soon with a sound alike because that would be very
No,
disrespectful.
no.
And I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
so I had this whole thing of I'm cursed, and it's like, oh no, sad passing away. Let's make it about me. No, I was very sad about Paul because he was wonderful. Absolutely
But
adored
it's
him.
understand it's a bit
Um,
of a passion project for you too. So,
yeah,
knowing that you did all that work to not seeing the fruits of your labor
and
kind
that's
of
the
is
thing.
another thing as well that could, it ultimately affects you in such a way. So it's okay to be
Yeah.
a little selfish in that manner.
And that's the thing. I mean, and within a day, it was announced that Paul had recorded all his dialogue for this box set and some for the next one at his home, about a few days before he passed away. So it was all cut in. It's all cut in seamlessly. So there's these beautiful scenes where I'm playing a villain, I'm having conversations with Paul, and it's kind of you can almost like trick your memory into thinking, yeah, he was actually there on the day.
Then you can say, "Oh, I
Because
met him. It was amazing."
no, no, but it was so so sad. And then there was this moment of thinking, um, it's not going to happen at all, and then it kind of did. So it's kind of bittersweet, but it's also lovely. And anyway, off the back of that, so with all the stress, I think I almost wonder if I got offered a Doctor Who as a little bit of a, oh, you've been through the emotional ringer there, what with changing the flights and Paul passing away. Let's give you a Doctor Who. And this was kind of weird because on the social media thing, so the day I got offered the Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Was basically I was arguing about Brexit a lot on social media. I was very against, I still am very against
Hey,
Brexit. I
like,
think it's a terrible
I'm the
idea.
same. I think
Yeah,
any person with common sense would be, because it was all driven about um, basically racism. And that's
yeah,
literally
yeah.
what it was. The basis of it was racism,
Oh, yeah,
which turned into misinformation. And
yeah,
misinformation has put the country into a disarray that is now. Like the whole reason that the UK is in such a bind right now, and everyone's in poverty, and the cost of living crisis that's happening, is a lot of it's to do with Brexit. And
yeah,
I know we're not supposed to be one of those podcasts talking about politics, but it is one of those things where you have to understand that this is something that affected the UK and affected it really badly.
yeah,
But in a time of crisis, you seem to have managed to kind of get into like some positives at least, because even though it was a big negative, and guys and gals, if you want me to do a Brexit podcast with Cliff, we could do that at
yeah.
some point. But
Oh,
let's
yeah,
continue about finding out
yeah,
more about Cliff,
yeah. So
because our views on politics are very polarizing. So let's focus on our guest and his ventures instead. So yeah, go Cliff.
but yes, but also all politics is art, and every bit of art is political. Wink. Anyway, so yeah, so basically, just to give a little bit context, so there was that, and kind of I didn't really get a massive pile on Twitter very often. I would poke at like pro Brexit people sometimes, and say, well, this is nonsense, prove it, and that's nonsense, that's awful, and that's terrible. But there was just this one day where suddenly I clearly triggered someone, and they got, I don't know whether they were famous or like internet famous, Twitter famous or something, but I suddenly had hundreds of people quoting me and slagging me off, and people being
As you
very
do.
unkind. People being very unkind. It's like, oh, he's an actor, but I've not heard of him. Who is he then? And it's like, well, being an actor is
I've
actually
had
an
that too.
there's
Don't
how
worry.
many
I've
famous
had I've
plumbers do
had
you
that all
know
the time.
actually, and
Yeah,
all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
But then people were actually doing fan art of me as Shrek, and stuff like that. And it was just this weird few hours of like, and some people go through this abuse every day, and it was kind of humbling to kind of realize it's like a couple of hours of this, and it's like, Jeez. And I was just like, block, 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 block. I'm not going to respond to most of this. It's kind of just weird. I took myself out in Wood Green. I lived in Wood Green. I was on my own in the day, and I went to a gelato place and I had an ice cream. And then I was in CEX. I thought I'll buy a nice game or a Blu-ray or something to cheer myself up, something cheap. And then as I was paying for whatever it was that I bought, I felt a sort of crunch. And basically the ice cream had frozen a tooth and a chunk of my tooth had broken off. And so I was like, oh my God, so I've had an online pylon, and now a tooth's broken. This is the worst day in the world. And then suddenly I get an email saying, do you want to be in Doctor Who? And it's like, I'm not a religious person. I'm not a very spiritual person, but there's just a little moment where it's like, oh, thanks. That's quite
Yeah, it's like
nice.
it's like whatever was above was just like, okay, Cliff, I'll give you a break. You've had like the whole community of trolls calling you Shrek, then you broke a tooth. So now we're going to give you,
Yeah.
I'll give you a little bit there, a
Yeah.
little
And
bit of
then I'm like, oh
seasoning.
my God, I finally got a role in Doctor Who on audio and I've broken a tooth. What if it's ruined my voice? And it was fine. It was okay. So anyway, when I went in, and there was some similar cast member, there were a couple of the people who were in the Blake Seven were also in this Doctor Who because, sometimes they get planned and they go, oh, let's use them for this and them for this. And
Did you get recommended by somebody to do that, or did they just have you on the casting file and thought, well, he did really well on this, let's bring him in on this?
I think that's it. I think the director cast it, and they would look through, and it was also a good test because it was four very different characters. So I was a
Mm.
big fruity Shakespearean villain, and I kind of went in. There was Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant in the studio, and I'd met them both at events. I'd interviewed Nicola at an event, the Misty Moon, a
Mhm.
few years before, and she's lovely. And Nev Fountain was there, the writer who's Nicola's partner, and so it was really nice because it was like there's so many people I already kind of knew, which just kind of helped the nerves. I was still nervous, but it kind of helped a bit. And yeah, so I played a big fruity Shakespearean villain. I just sort of said, I was just in case. My instinct may be to go over the top here, so do bring me down if you need to. And Colin's like over the top. It was
But
very
that's the
fun,
way it
and
should be. You always go
he
over the top and then they just bring you down, don't they?
yeah,
Because
no, he
that's
was
how
he was
characters are formed.
it was a lot of fun. We were on the same page, and he gave great notes. Everyone gave kind of great notes from the director, and there are a couple of pronunciations. Colin really knows his words. He used to be on like Dictionary Corner and not Count. I think he did Countdown as well. Was it Crosswits? I think. Anyway, he was a fount of all knowledge for all the pronunciations and things, and he was great. And we also had a chat about Marvel films because we were just sort of saying about the latest Marvel film, and he was like, "Oh, I love those. I watch them with my children, and I have such fun." And I was like,
So it
"Yeah,
was like 2019, so it'd be around about Infinity War time, right?
yeah." It was like peak, absolute peak Marvel, and it's like
Yeah.
that childhood thrill that I used to get from Doctor Who. I was actually getting from Marvel as much that kind of time as
Oh,
well.
I loved it. Like I remember traveling to the United States and then coming back to the UK. And on the day I was suffering jet lag, I just decided to go and watch Infinity War in the cinema. And I remember watching it, and during the death scene, some freaking idiot started talking with his mates on the phone while like I'm sitting there bawling my eyes out watching Tony Stark like it's okay, Tony, it's okay. And
Clicking.
I'm like, ah! And I'm like crying, and some dude's like chatting to his mate, and I looked at him and I went, boy, listen, doing my best EastEnders impression. Boy, listen, if you don't shut up.
Oh, I went to see Return of the King in 2003, wasn't it? I think. And
Yeah.
there were two very, very posh young children who were sat in front, and they were desperate for the entire audience to know that they'd read the books already. They were like
Jesus.
9 or 10. I mean, I say this, I could. I could have so close been one of those children when I was that age. So I'm casting stones at my own house a little bit. But they were just kind of, oh well, that wasn't in the book actually, and actually this is different, and oh he doesn't say this, and I ended up leaning over and said, guys, in a year's time this will come out with four commentaries on the DVD. I don't need one now.
At least you were nice about it. Like
Yeah,
literally, I was ready to freaking kick off with these guys because I was just like, I'm having a moment.
yeah,
Shut up.
yeah. Oh, I was
And they were
thinking
just
that
like, oh,
verbally. Like, I
yeah.
may have whispered, "Shut up, shut up, shut up." Anyway, but yeah, so I had a lovely time. I really, really enjoyed it, and then and also that year. So basically, I've been doing Games Workshop. Games Workshop, I'd done loads of, and they were still kind of petering out a little bit. So they were getting fewer and far between, just because sometimes you do
Yeah.
20 or 30 things, and um, but I still love them. And then I did Alien 3. I got a message say, would you like to be in Alien 3? I was like, yes, of course. So the William Gibson script, because Alien 3 had various versions. So the David
Yeah,
Fincher
yeah. There
version
was
that we
there
saw on
was
screen
various
was
revisions on it as well until it ended up in the hands of what was her
Fincher.
name? It was Fincher, right? Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
Fincher.
And
So but apparently the pre-existing one was the best one, the one that you did was
yeah,
supposed to
so
be the fundamental one.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's much more in the vein of Aliens. A lot of people from Aliens are still alive in the version of Alien 3, spoilers. And it was great. And that was basically my first time working for Audible, my first time working for fantastic producer Dirk Maggs, who I think I can say, you know, he's amazing. And
Please
it's
don't add him on
because
Facebook, ladies and gentlemen. Just in the nicest
yeah,
way possible. Do not add anybody on this podcast on Facebook, including Cliff.
yeah.
Because
Well,
I do understand that a lot of
you can
people
follow me
probably
on
want
Blue
to.
Sky and you can follow me on Twitter and stuff. But yeah, you know,
Yeah.
so I'd met I'd met Dirk previously at an event and followed his work a lot. Lots of my friends had worked for Dirk, and I worked with his son, who's a wonderful actor, Tom, on a Games Workshop, which we played Orcs, and it was just joyous. And so again, confluence thing, not just sort of one thing, but a whole confluence of things that lets someone kind of know, I can take a chance on them. I can cast them in something. And so basically, Ian had worked for Dirk as well. And anyway, so I got
Mhm.
into Alien 3, and it was so funny because I got the contract on the Thursday, and on the Friday I got a call from my agent saying they're just checking you can do a Cuban accent, right? And I was like, yeah. So that was quick voiceover coaching with a friend of mine who's very good at accents, and you know, from that kind of area, and watched Scarface and kind of really work hard. So I had a very very quick workout, and then we had a read through. The thing about Cuban accent, it's very flat. One of the characteristics of it, in terms of when you're doing it, is to kind of take some emotion out. And there was also someone who was playing a
Would you
Spanish
can
character.
you do a variation of that now, like a Cuban
Uh,
accent?
Puta madre. And get to work, little one. Maybe you'll find a rich, handsome capitalist. Uh, that's a line that sticks in my mind.
Excellent.
An awful lot of lines stick in my mind. Some of them because I play them over forever and ever again, just thinking, oh, I might just get it right this time. Because, you know, we're never satisfied, darlings. But anyway, so yeah, so I played De Solis, who is great because you know he gets to run around a ship and he doesn't die immediately from an alien, and he gets to shoot a gun a lot, and it's cool, it's awesome, and you know, in sort of you know, it was a really good bit of work. We had a read through and then we did a record, which was quite unusual. So a read through day and then a
Hmm.
recording day. Normally it's kind of go in, kind of do it, just do it,
Yeah,
you know,
because
have a
it's
have a
it
take
it
hold and then
yeah, it's like in a sense it reminds me a bit more TV because TV you get more table reads. So you
yeah.
get to like kind of rehearse, develop the chemistry, talk to people, do your dual logs, your monologues and stuff, but you get to do a lot of the groundwork at the table before you go in. Whereas, as you said with voice, it's more about they give you the script, you try to get some of the lines down, and then you just do it there on the time on the day, right?
Yeah, so it was a luxury and it was absolutely joyous. And then so I've got all these things happening. So I've started to do a bit
Hmm.
more Big Finish. I'm still kind of doing the last couple of games workshops, and I've started to do Audible, and then moved to the Netherlands. So my partner got a job at a university in the Netherlands. She's Dutch, which hopefully makes more sense of it. And she'd moved down to London to be with me. So it kind of only made sense that I would come to the Netherlands. And you know, it was kind of, you know, I don't think Boris Johnson was quite prime minister, but it was looking likely. Brexit was terrible. Everything was getting incredibly expensive and depressing. The flat rental market was awful, and you know, we never knew whether we were going to have a flat in a year's time or not. Um, and um, and so the move kind of made sense. So moved to the
Still
Netherlands.
does. Like with the cost of living currently in the UK, this what people don't understand. One of the reasons I chose to live to China to move to China was I'm probably making a similar amount of money that I would as a teacher in the UK, but I'm able to kind of live. Like,
Yeah,
housing's not too expensive. Everything is more affordable here. Like they have, you know, um basically relationships with other countries where we can get good goods from for relatively cheap so that I'm able to kind of live a sustainable life, whereas in the UK, because they've cut themselves off for everyone else, it wasn't sustainable. So I can totally empathize with the fact that you decided to make that move. And plus, because of the majority of your role is voice work, you don't really need to be there for it.
Yeah, I mean, I got set up with a remote studio pretty quickly. When I was in London, I was actually mostly going into studios and I had some basic audio kit. But in hindsight, it wasn't really, it wasn't studio quality. I could get away with an audition or, something quick. But yeah, I should also clarify with the Netherlands. So the Netherlands particularly is not necessarily cheaper. The thing about the Netherlands is that you're kind of, although the taxes are a bit higher and the kind of food prices are a bit more and everything, with the tax and stuff, you kind of see where your tax money goes in terms of cycling infrastructure and roads. And so it's kind of like the quality of life is so much better, even though it's
But you also got
expensive
your
in a way.
partner with you as well, right? So
Yeah.
you're
And of course,
two,
so if I was
two
on
house
my own,
income, yeah.
yeah, it was, but yeah, so, yeah, between that, it kind of worked. And then, kind of the whole nether, we know we're not going to do politics, but anyway, so yeah, so, my partner had
So you moved to
moved to the
Netherlands.
Netherlands. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'd got the Blake Seven. Then my
Hmm.
partner moved to the Netherlands, and then I got the Doctor Who. So I was still in the UK doing my last bits of work in various places, and I got the Doctor Who, and then I moved out to the Netherlands at the end of September. And for the first month, I was sort of knocking around in my partner's dad's house. We were living there while we looked for a flat to rent, and I didn't have a lot to do, and I went to the cinema to see Joker. Because I love Marvel, I love DC. I'm not necessarily always a huge fan of DC films, particularly,
I
but
feel
I do
like
love
this
the
is a lot with
characters.
DC is they rush too much, you know. And I
Yeah.
do like you, I like the Elseworld takes on the characters, like what Joker was. It was a new take. It was very different. It pulled a few elements from here, there, and everywhere, like the Killing Joke. So I
Mm.
was really intrigued by that movie as well. So
Yeah, I thought it was.
what did you think of it, by the way?
Well, that's the thing. So I went to the cinema. I was
Mhm.
watching, I was knocking around the flat and I thought, I'm going to go to the cinema, see what it's like. And the first thing you want to know, any film you see in the Netherlands has an interval in most places. So it kind of just breaks at one point and you go off and you get a drink or you go to the loo, which in the age of 3 hour films is fantastic. And also you have subtitles in Dutch. And so the more you learn Dutch, the more you start to notice how sometimes things are simplified for subtitles or maybe changed because it doesn't directly translate. So that was kind of interesting. But
Mm.
anyway, it was kind of one of my first experiences of subtitle Dutch, presentation of big films. I thought Phoenix was fantastic. I thought it looked beautiful. But I had serious issues with how it presented mental health and some of its implications in this whole kind of. I think um, it's one of those awful things of modern politics where it's actually, kind of taking sort of left wing progressive issues and kind of filtering them slightly down a right wing route in a bit of a way. Do you know what I
No, I
mean?
know what you mean. I do.
That
There's
sort of
this kind of
MAGA thing, that sort of
closed-minded,
Brexit thing.
yeah. It's a
So
closed-minded approach, I think, as well, because we have this here in China at the moment because I put together two plans for two students who are failing, and literally I won't go too much into the discussion, but the general consensus was we're not going to give those plans to the parents. We're just going to let them fail. And it's the students' fault because they're lazy. And it was just like, they're not lazy. There's just a huge load of mental health issues going on with these kids. And we can pivot them into the right direction, but we just got to lower the standards a little bit. Like, it's literally just taking them from, an entry into an art degree to entering a foundation course before the art degree,
yeah,
because the requirements are a lot lower than compared to the actual degree itself. But the whole general consensus is, well, they're just lazy. And I think
yeah.
with the Joker, it was kind of similar. It was like, oh yeah, he had mental health problems, but he was just mad.
I
He's just a
think that
crazy psychopath.
I think there was just I think you could fix Joker in just a few lines. I think there's a slightly dangerous sense of he's got mental health issues, so of course he's going to end up going mad and killing people, because an awful lot
Yeah.
of people with mental health issues are
very kind and decent and safe people to be around who need support,
Yeah,
and
I
he's
know.
not going to kill you. So there was a little bit of, and that's a
Mhm.
very sensitive thing, but it was a well-made film. And anyway, so I came
Yeah,
out and I
very
did
well
this
made.
long status of my thoughts, and it was a very sort of mixed bag of, this is what I thought, basically summarizing that. And then I went into an email and said, we'd like to cast you in Sandman. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Oh my God, that's fantastic. Hang on, I've just slagged off a DC film on Facebook. Maybe I'll delete that. But no, I hadn't slagged it off. I'd given a nuanced
But I
review.
remember you
Um,
separated your accounts at this point, right? Because you separated one between like a business account and the other one is
uh,
the it is
there
your
was a
main
while.
account.
There was a point where, with Brexit, with all those kind of things, I kind of thought, and with Doctor Who opinions as well, because I love Doctor Who deep within my soul, but much like a sports fan, sometimes it really winds me up, and sometimes I'm very disappointed in it, and it annoys me. So,
No, but because
there's
I
that
remember you were
fan
telling
thing.
me as well, because I was going on a tangent about Brexit and everything, and you went, I think you need to separate your accounts, have one for your business
Yeah,
and one for your personal, because you don't really want to be letting people that want to work with you about opinions that they may not agree with.
yeah,
And I remember us
absolutely.
having a conversation about this big chinwag, so to speak.
Yes, yes, and there's a fine line. Anyway, so I did that. I did that a while back. I set up a professional Facebook, but the thing with social media, it's so fragmented. There's Mastodon, there's Blue Sky, there's Twitter, which is still called Twitter. There, and Twitter's dying, but there's still a bit of it. There's still a bit of work on there. There's still some nice friends and good banter on there.
Of
Blue
course.
Sky, I'm becoming my natural kind of main thing. And then there's Instagram, which is for my cat and Warhammer, just because I don't
Mm.
look good in a bikini, so it's cat and Warhammer instead of bikini for me. And I
You
don't know.
could look good in a bikini, Cliff. You just don't
I
try
could,
enough.
I could,
You
I
just don't
could.
try enough.
Anyway, so yeah, social media. Yes, yeah. So anyway, I got the
You had
Sandman
that
part. I was
polarizing thing about the Joker thing,
I
and then
was
you
I
had
was
the
a little
Sandman
bit like
casting.
it was very funny because I just had complex thoughts about a DC film, and then I
Yeah.
got cast in DC, and Sandman's amazing. Neil Gaiman, absolute legend. Back from Neverwhere and stuff. I remember the Neverwhere TV show that's got Peter Capaldi in it, as the Angel Islington and all that kind of
Who's
stuff.
one of my favorite Doctor Who's, my favorite modern day
Yeah,
Doctor Who's. Him and
oh, he's
Eccleston, I
superb.
think.
They're
They were the
superb.
most tortured variations of the Doctor that I liked. I felt like I did like Tennant, but I felt he was a little bit too preachy at times.
Do you know?
And
I
Smith as
really
well.
I appreciated Tennant's older portrayal as 14. I thought, having that little bit of maturity and slightly being on the back foot, being a bit
Mm.
older, it was everything that was good about the 10th Doctor, and then just a little bit calmer and more wistful. And I thought it was a very, very good performance in the specials, and I quite enjoyed. I know what you mean. He comes across as quite young, and the kind of the sexy Doctor is sometimes a little bit weird. I
You know
expected to
what got it
hate
for
Matt
me?
Smith. Go on.
What got it for me at the end, it was before Matt, he changed to Matt Smith and he did that whole I don't want to go thing. It was like he turned something that should have been very small into this huge gravitas Shakespearean monologue thing. A lot of like I'm kind of polarizing on that because a lot of people liked his exit from the first time where he was just like, I don't want to go. And he's traveling to all these different points in time where he met people, but I just found it too pompous in a way.
I
Like
know what you mean. It's quite
yeah,
meta. It's because he's a fan.
yeah,
He loves Doctor Who, and I think the end of time is, as Doctor Who stories go, it's a bit of a cocaine nightmare. I think it's a metaphor for
yeah.
cocaine with the Master and so I don't know. It's a bit all over the place. But yeah, I loved his second portrayal. Yeah, Matt Smith. I was at drama school when Matt Smith had been cast, and then I went to drama school. My dream of being the youngest ever Doctor Who was shot in tatters already, and I kind of expected to hate Matt Smith, and I just begrudgingly watched his first episode, and he won me over in 2 minutes. And I was like, "Oh my
He
God,
was
you're really good."
very
Okay,
childlike, but also very old. Like
I
he
think
had
yeah,
this
he.
kind of gravitas to him in a sense.
I believed he was old. I think a lot of us absolutely freaked out, and it's like 27. But he did old very, very well, to the point where it's like I
Yeah,
think in his final story, where he spends an awful lot of his final story in old age makeup. I was like, is this
yeah.
an extended joke at those of us who whinged? It probably is, isn't it? But no, he was spectacular. I thought he was very good. I adored
Well, I remember
Capaldi.
when he was originally casted, they were going to cast an older doctor,
Mm.
and he came, and I think there was an issue between the producers and the showrunner at the time. Who was the showrunner? It wasn't was it
It went from
Moffat?
Russell T Davis to Moffat, and
It
then
was
to
Moffat,
Chibnall.
yeah. So Moffat basically didn't want to cast him when he first saw him because they kept trying to put him in the room, and he was just like, no, no, no. And then he saw him, and he did his take, and then Moffat changed his mind because he was like, he just felt like this young person in an old with an old soul,
Mm.
and he was everything that he thought he wasn't gonna be, but he turned out to be this amazing kind of character. And I loved his run. I felt like with Tennant, you had this kind of aged, like soul crushing doctor. There's certain aspects of Tennant's Doctor that I did like Time Lord Victorious. I felt could have been expanded on a bit more. I know
Yeah.
I don't even think they finished that, to be honest,
Well,
but
it the idea was a big multimedia event where there were, there was like escape room, there were live events, there were like one-off
yeah.
things, there was free comic book day, there was Big Finish. I think as a concept, it's quite good in that it gets Doctor Who fans to try certain things that they might not ordinarily have tried. So, for example, there's a lot of people who are quite skeptical about Big Finish. I mean, Big Finish got me through the hiatus beautifully. I
Yeah.
absolutely adore an awful lot. I have the app on my phone. When there's sales, I buy stuff. I can't. I'm a bit behind, and I'm
I
on
might do
limited
that
funds
myself
sometimes.
because
Yeah,
I'm
the
on an Audible subscription, and a lot of that is because I just don't have time to read as much as I usually do, and I get burnt out from academic papers, constant
yeah.
academic papers.
Yeah, I mean, I downloaded some of the older Big Finish stories. Even though I've got them on CD somewhere and MP3 rips on an iPod somewhere and a hard drive somewhere, I was like, oh, I'll pay £3 or €3, not much, to have this story again. So I was gardening for a neighbour the other day as one of my jobs. Lovely Veronica and Paul, who've been very supportive and give me a bit of work when I'm not doing other work. And yeah, I really love listening to Big Finish when I'm gardening and stuff. And yeah, it kind of got us through the kind of the hiatus and everything. And the new the new series I've mostly enjoyed. There's been times where I've been incredibly excited. That Matt Smith kind of run, The Doctor's Wife, Neil Gaiman, absolutely superb.
Mm.
And to segue in into there, it's kind of um, yeah, it was in a bit of a thing. I really Matt Smith surprised me, and I absolutely loved him. Peter Capaldi for me was like the perfect choice to play the next Doctor.
Oh, I
To go from young
adored
to old, and
Capaldi. Yeah.
yeah,
He brought
and
me
he's
back in a sense because I was kind of like halfway with Tennant.
mm,
I didn't really see, like, everybody else loved Tennant, but I was kind of like, I'm not sure about him. Then I watched a little bit of Smith, but Capaldi drew me all the way in. And I think it's more because his doctor was this tortured soul who kept trying to do everything right. It kind of
yeah,
dovetailed off the whole, like, Tennant said, with that, like, the whole time of Victorious came from a line that the doctor said where he's like, I'm the doctor, I can do anything, I can change anything, I can stop death from occurring,
mm,
and you had that kind of aspect with Capaldi too. So I
yeah,
loved all that part of the Doctor because I always felt like the Doctor was more human when he was a tortured character rather than, I think you said we had this conversation before. We don't think Doctor Who's a superhero. And I think that's
yeah.
what was destroyed with the Chibnall era. He made the Doctor too much like a superhero with the Timeless Child.
Yeah, I mean, this was the thing, Doctor Who Big Finish got me through a long period where Doctor Who wasn't on TV. And also, when you're adjusting to the new series, they're shorter episodes, they're self-contained
Mm.
45 minutes, so there's not always the plot story development time. Sometimes the endings felt a bit rushed. Sometimes, big new exciting ideas didn't always gel with. And then yeah, and then I saw Heaven Sent, I remember, with Capaldi, which is just a tour de force. Rachel Talalay directs it incredibly well. Moffat writes it incredibly well. Capaldi plays it beautifully. You know, a meditation of death and being trapped and just running around and around and around, with no escape. You know, kind of chasing shadows of death, and you know, Heaven Sent is incredible. And then within a couple of months of that, hearing that the guy who'd written Cyberwoman and Day One and Countryside and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang from Torchwood had taken over Doctor Who, and everyone would go, "Oh, but it's also the guy from Broadchurch." And it's like, I've seen a lot of ITV cop drama. My gran was really, really into ITV cop dramas. If the only cop drama you've seen for a while is Midsummer Murders, I kind of get that you'd be excited by Broadchurch, but you know, I, you've seen Morse and Wycliffe and Wexford and Cracker and all that kind of stuff. It's
They
like, you know,
tried to do like
Broadchurch
a,
wasn't
if
that
I
great.
remember, with Broadchurch, they tried to bring it to the US twice. They did one variation of it and it had Tennant in it. Then they tried to bring it
Yeah.
back again with someone else
Oh
and
God,
it just didn't work.
I'd forgotten
Yeah.
about. I haven't seen them. I've seen clips, I think, but
Yeah,
I
they,
mean,
they
because
brought
the
it for like one season. It was cancelled after like 5 episodes, if I remember
yeah,
straight.
but I mean, this is like, you know, reheating rice will kill you, because it's like the whole point of Broadchurch was it was like an ITV crime drama, but it was meant to have a Twin Peaks vibe, I think. And this is the
Yeah.
thing, Chibnall, you know, Chibnall took over the thing, and I think Chibnall kind of conceptually, on some level, understands sometimes what you need to do, but doesn't quite make the leap into actually making it good. A good example is a writer like Douglas Adams will introduce a barrage of absolutely insane concepts to you that are hilarious and weird and just barking mad. But then he'll sell them to you like a brilliant salesman, and you can, you know, you buy the Babel fish, you buy the guide, you buy Zaphod Beeblebrox, and you know you know, the Heart of Gold. You buy it all. You know, all these mad concepts. Part of being a good fantasy sci-fi writer is just kind of selling them to you. I think Pratchett does that very well. I think Gaiman does that very well, you know, on a very lyrical
I
kind of
will give him
fantasy
his
level.
flowers though for his portrayal of the Master. I felt his, despite the fact that they did that whole destroy Gallifrey thing again, which was like they like you had these two showrunners that built up Gallifrey, that built the Return of Gallifrey up, so the Doctor would not have it on his conscience, and then you just had this guy destroy it again, just because
I, yeah,
he found out that Doctor Who was Jesus, basically
yeah.
space Jesus.
I've got a lot of
Um,
time for Sacha Dhawan. I have very, very little time for that
He's
plot line.
so
I think
good.
yeah, I like him, but I think the whole character is tainted by the abomination of that plot thread of the Timeless Child.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
so
I
sad that
totally
Russell T
agree.
Davies is carrying it on, because it's just it's a superheroification of the Doctor, where the Doctor was different.
Yeah,
I think the idea, the Doctor being a special, weird kind of child, they did a bit
and
of it in the
they're
books.
also insinuating that he's not even Gallifreyan.
Well, that's
Like
the thing.
he's from somewhere, yeah, or
Yeah,
he or
and there's
she is
people
from
that
somewhere.
say,
They,
well, the New Adventures novels of the 90s, you know, Doctor Who was off the telly, and, you know, they continue, you know, there was a continuation in novel form. There were serious adult books, there was sex, there was swearing, there was an awful lot of cyberspace where people go into computer virtual worlds for lengthy periods, a lot of old monsters given twists, a lot of some of the more rubbish monsters were kind of, you know, massively revamped, all that kind of stuff. And there was this whole thread of the Doctor being the other, you know, having gone back to sort of Gallifrey, you know, he was much older and much more manipulative, which has started to bring in the McCoy era. But the thing is, I think they did that better and they did it different because there was an ambiguity. The thing about The Timeless Child is it's just the Master giving the Doctor a PowerPoint presentation. It's a whole load of information with no action or you know, there's action that's nothing to do with that story.
well,
um
like he killed Gallifrey off screen, like
but
literally
that's the
just
thing.
brings the Doctor there, and everything's just burning to the ground.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, we've had the death of we had the death of Gallifrey in the books.
Yeah, the Time
You know,
War.
yeah, I mean, you know, it's a very Superman thing to do, you know, the death of your home planet, you're the last survivor. Again, it's a very
But I did
superhero thing.
like it because they did it like the good thing about it is that I felt like it was done right with the collaboration between Big Finish, because Big Finish like expanded on the death of Gallifrey, so we knew
Yeah,
what happened.
oh, I mean, there's some
And
fantastic Gallifrey spin-offs and stuff. I mean,
yeah,
the Big Finish do the best stuff with Time Lords. There's this villain called the 11. I would love to meet. I would love to do an audio drama with the 11, Mark Bonar. Who's is the idea is the Time Lord. This is me speaking as a fan. I've got nothing to do with this. Is the thing. I think it's the best concept in the world. He's a Time Lord, and every time he's an evil megalomaniac Time Lord, and he sort of regenerates. Something's gone wrong, so basically I think he's got the same body, but his brain regenerates each time. So he just ends up with more and more personalities that come forward to take his
So he's
voice
like
in his
he's like bipolar basically.
well, or 11 polar kind of thing. I think that's amazing. But I digress. That's me as a fan. But yeah, I think the problem with Chibnall is he kind of conceptually he sort of has a rough idea of what he needs to do, and he's just incapable of executing anything. You know, there are people who are saying, "Oh, I love the Timeless Child now because the Doctor's emotional reaction." When he's the 14th Doctor as Tennant in Wild Blue Yonder, you know, the anger and that kind of frustration, and when he mentions it in the giggle, you know, that kind of sells the idea to me. I mean, for me,
Well, we
I loved
spoke
him.
about it before. Like we were talking about the fact that I remember you telling me that Chibnall does not know how to write female characters at
There's
all.
that, yeah. I mean, the 13th the 13th Doctor has no agency. You know, her idea of investigation is just to kind of shout, "Tell me what's going on." They gave her three companions on the basis that, well, William Hartnell had three companions. Yes, those stories were 2.5 or 3 hours long. You know, they were, you know, stories told over 6 or 7 weeks a lot of the
And they
time,
never really
4 weeks.
expanded on the companions either. They didn't give them any identity. They
Yeah,
had
that's
an
a
awkward conversation between her and one whose wife died, but they didn't expand on how he was going emotionally after his wife died. You
yeah.
had the other one where she was supposed to have like a sexual attraction to the girl. I forgot what her name is. She was supposed to be her like
There's
love
Yaz and the
interest,
Doctor.
like her
Yeah,
rose. Yaz,
and
yeah,
it's all
like
tell.
her
It's all tell.
rose.
Yeah, you never
Yeah.
actually see Yaz do anything particularly interesting, but it's all,
No,
oh,
it's all
Yaz, you're the most
exposition,
amazing
right?
person. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Bradley Walsh is all right, you know, as Graham. You know, he does quite a lot with what little he gets. Tosin Cole clearly didn't want to be there and has made it very clear since he didn't want to be there, which is a shame. He seems quite charming. There's a sort of charm. He seems quite a nice person.
Was
Um,
he the one who played the young man who's supposed to have like autism, or he was
Dyspraxia.
supposed to
Yeah,
have
he couldn't ride a
dyspraxia?
bike, and
That's
that was
it.
the whole
Yeah,
thing. Runs around
but
shooting a
they only
gun when
did
he
that
needs to, no
like
problem.
well, they did that. They did that little bit with him for like a couple of episodes. They had him have his own YouTube like channel talking
Yeah,
about it, and then they just kind of rid it out of his character, and
yeah,
then just made him anything like he was like the Chekhov's gun. Anything that they needed, well, all the companions were in a way. If they needed a
mm,
companion to fill a slot, they just got the relevant companion and just gave them some exposition to say like, oh yeah, he knows how to fire a gun now, or
yeah.
Yaz knows how to do karate or something like that, just to add that little bit of exposition so the Doctor has that kind of key to get her out of the situation, out of the corner he's written himself into.
Yeah, and I think it's just basically when I heard that Chris Chibnall was taking over Doctor Who, I knew his work very well, and I thought his work was terrible, and I was very upset and very annoyed. May have
Because I
mentioned it
remember
online a
when you
little
were
bit.
posting about it. Oh, you did it a lot. Like I remember
I
we were talking
I
about it a
might have
lot.
mentioned it, but that's the thing. You know, I'm just I'm passionate about Doctor Who being good. Obviously, you know, oh, frog in my throat. You know, I mean, you know, it's that sports fan thing. You know, you get carried away, and sometimes
Mm.
hyperbole is a thing as well. I think on the internet we can be very, very literal, and sometimes, you know, some of it's tongue in cheek. You know, and but you know, there's some of it sending myself up. I know I'm like passionately, you know, passionate
But
about
it's also
certain
the
stuff, but I
expectation as
will
well,
send
right? When you
myself up.
know that it's bad, when you know that
Yeah,
it's bad, you know that it's not going to get any better. Like
yeah,
even when he was doing Flux, it really didn't get it wasn't really the best. It was kind of like them saying goodbye to this character that really wasn't as fleshed out as she should have been. Like
yeah.
she was very underwritten.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there are glimmers of some comments. I think the first couple of episodes of Flux are okay. The Sontarans are quite funny, but they're quite well done. The first episode feels a little bit like a sketch show. It's got lots of different characters. It doesn't really cohere very well. I think when you watch something like Game of Thrones and you're introduced to a lot of groups of people, there's a sort of thematic mood kind of coherence. You go from one bunch of characters to another, and you feel a sense of emotional context building. Whereas in Flux, it's Chibnall kind of has seen that but not entirely understood that, so it kind of feels more
Up
like a
until
sketch show.
season 5. Up until
Yeah.
season 5.
Well, yeah, Game of Thrones, yeah, does go
Yeah,
down.
that's when
Um,
the showrunners took control and stopped using R. Martin's writing because he
well, it's
hadn't
when they
finished
ran
the
out of
story.
book. It's
Yeah,
when
yeah,
they ran out of book, and I think George Martin's probably was at one point making a serious effort to finish the book. I
yeah.
don't think he
But
is
he
anymore.
was, I know, he was a bit annoyed by the result of that. I remember him talking about it, saying that he was very annoyed with how the series ended, and they should have just got him to come in and write the script, and
Yeah,
he would have done it himself. But they kind of
yeah,
just froze him out.
yeah.
Um,
The
but
the George
like, yeah, sorry, go on.
I was going to say the when's the next book thing always kind of makes me laugh because as a kind of someone who got quite invested in it for a while, I want the next book.
Mm.
And there's the kind of the mature artist response, the creative response is to say George Martin doesn't owe us anything. He's a creative and he will do what he likes and that's fine. But there's part of me that thinks if I was a cat and I'd been fed cat food at 6:30 every day, and then suddenly there was no cat food, and I'd sort of become to rely on this cat food because it's kind of what you do. You're human as a cat. Your human is to provide you with food. That is what you're for. And you may, and the cat will go, oh, they quite like love and affection. So
Well,
yeah,
they see you like a
all right
big
then.
cat. They're
Yeah,
like you're a big cat who feeds
a big
us.
cat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's an argument that I think being a creative in general, you have to have an understanding of of your audience, and there has to be
Mm.
an element of respect for at least most of your audience. Some of your audience are going to be batshit crazy, and there's going to be a portion of your audience that's going to be quite contrary, and they're going to say that they like your stuff very much, but they also don't share any
With the
values
rise of the
or
internet,
anything, stuff
though,
like that.
with the rise
Yeah,
of the internet, we have this level of entitlement now, I think.
yeah,
Where like it's even with you and I, like I'm currently in one of the most toxic fan bases, the pro wrestling fan base. And the
oh,
amount of time I've seen WWE, sorry, stands go on about like this new company, AEW. They want the company to die. So they keep posting ratings. They keep talking about television ratings like it means anything in this day and age. They will constantly, like the guy who books the shows, who makes the matches, he's like a wrestling fan. Technically, I wouldn't call him the Chibnall of wrestling because he's a lot better than Chibnall because he knows what he's doing. The guy's name's Tony Khan, but the amount of like crap this guy is given from wrestling fans, people would literally have the balls to go on Twitter and start ripping him and his dad to shreds. And his dad's like a billionaire, right? But
yeah,
the one thing that this company has done is brought a lot of competition. A lot of people are making money. There's more jobs now. A lot of people who had to fight because there was a monopoly in wrestling are now got like work. And there's similar issues that happens inside of film, television, books, everything, where you have these stands. I actually quoted you by saying probably the most toxic fan base, more so and then pro wrestling fans is probably Doctor Who fans,
yeah.
Whovians, because there's that entitlement in a sense, because a lot of them expect things to be done their way. Like, as you said, some people like the adult novels, other people like the big finish, some people may like the stuff that was not even canon, Then you've got Tennant fans, you've got Chibnall fans as well. And then you've got like Russell T
Mm,
Davis fans and
yeah.
for someone who's in that industry, because you've done the work, but you're also a fan, what do you think is the biggest problem with entitlement when it comes to like any sort of media?
I don't know. I think we've got a constant shifting in balance. We've got an audience that doesn't understand creatives sometimes, and we've got creatives that don't understand audiences sometimes. I think there's an element of kindness and support. You have to remember there's an awful lot of people who can be, you could be quite lonely. You could be in a very difficult situation. You could be
Hmm.
neurodiverse. You can use a TV show to give you comfort and, something to do, something to focus on, it can become a passion. And you can learn an awful lot from it. You can learn social cues from it. You can learn facts and information that will help you through life. You can learn a moral code from a TV show. And so there's an awful lot of kind of, but the thing is, you have to remember that people like things for different reasons as well. So,
Yeah,
there's a lot of right-wing Doctor Who fans, which is sometimes puzzling, but then you can kind of,
it's gone too woke, and you're like, what? It was
well, this
always
is the,
woke.
yeah, I mean, from very, very early days, Doctor Who is dealing with racism and xenophobia and different cultures. Something like the Censorites, God bless it. It's a very slow, shambly, kind of rocky little production, but it's also about aliens that, have good and bad aliens in there. And, it's a whole society, and the humans have come in to kind of strip their resources. And, the humans have all disappeared and being killed off, but, there's a big power struggle. And, so like the Censorites, I will wildly take the mickey out of because it's very dull in places. It's very slow. It's a
I,
very,
I'm
very
I'm one of those
1960s
guys
production.
who every time I hear the words unobtainium from Avatar,
Yeah,
always freaking slays me. I'm just like, you're that lazy that you
that's
have to
it.
call a natural resource unobtainium.
That's the funny thing. In the sensor, it's called the thing is called molybdenum, and molybdenum is not that easy to say for anyone. And then Paul William Hartnell, who doesn't always get his words out very easily, is it the thing? This is very funny. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, Doctor Who from very early days has been doing quite nuanced stuff. There's been some issues with representation of race, and sometimes there's been white actors playing Asian characters and other characters, and kind of aliens made up in color, which looks in black and white like someone's put boot polish on and someone is blacking up, and that's deeply problematic now. There's various sort of issues, but they kind of they kind of stumbled on being relatively progressive. The Pertwee era is incredibly environmental and kind of anti-colonial. It's got a lot to say.
Well, it's the
The
same with like
60,
Chinese castings back in the day. Remember the Chinese castings? They used to
yeah,
have white dudes like making fun of Chinese people.
yeah.
And oh, what was the most historic one? The guy who did Short Circuit, who's supposed to play an Indian guy, and it
Oh,
turned
that
out
broke
he was
my
just some
heart.
white guy with makeup. Yeah, I thought he was Indian. I
Genuinely, when I was
literally
a
thought he
kid,
was Indian.
I remember saying how much I love Short Circuit 2,
Me
especially
too.
to a friend. And
I was a
then they
big Steve
said,
Gutenberg fan
yeah,
back
and
when
then
I
they
was a
said about
kid.
Fisher Stevens, and the penny dropped. And I felt so awful. And I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God. But I think, yeah, I think there's there's an element to sort of say, you should never do that now. I think they were trying to be respectful in their own clumsy, poor kind of way, that kind of thing.
Of
I
course.
think there's a sort of level of sort of not boomer forgiveness, but sort of boomer patience and boomer understanding. I think sometimes people should be allowed to make mistakes. The important thing is to apologize and own up. The big problem we've got is when someone says something awful and then doubles down, and they have this horrible little
They
bunch of
do this
harpies
too.
saying you
People
were
on the
right, you were
internet
good.
too much. Yeah,
You know,
people on the internet too much. I know a guy with pro wrestling at the moment who does that. He will screen cap his own tweets of him saying nasty things to the people who make the wrestling,
that's
and
like
then
liking
he'll
your
put
own
it.
farts.
Yeah, this I was telling him this at the same time, right? He then posts those tweets on a forum, a wrestling forum, where the other guys are like, "You're the man," and I'm like, "Dude, this
Look at
is
me,
just
I'm so hot.
literally." This is the Twitter equivalent or the social media equivalent of sucking yourself off. Like,
Yeah, it's
you've
ridiculous.
literally giving yourself, yeah, like he's giving himself a facial, and I don't understand why
Yeah.
why he's
I
doing it.
I think the balance is, I think as an audience member, you've got to remember that much like an election, much like politics, basically, if you're core audience, you're probably going to be there. You might be grumpy and you might tell people that you're not going to watch, but you might eventually watch. And I think they're a lot of the thing, they're chasing a new audience a lot of the time. They're chasing a younger audience. With Disney Plus, with Shooty Gatwa, there's the sex education audience. There's going to be millions of people who've never watched Doctor Who before, who thought it was just some rubbish sci-fi. They're not interested in sci-fi, but they'll watch it because they think Ncuti Gatwa is amazing, and he appears to be very, very good. And so it's kind of making Doctor Who not fit with a whole new audience, but kind of introducing it to him, making it interesting. So I understand that.
Do
I think
you do you like the idea that they're calling this season one?
Well, I mean, this has been a comic thing for years. Every so often, they're like, "Oh, big shake up of this comic range. We're going to go back to issue one." That's been quite new. I remember my friends sort of talking about that. When the new series came back, and friend was like saying, "Oh, do you think they'll call it season one?" Because a lot of us were saying, "Oh, it'll be season 27." Russell T Davies is a fan. Doctor Who magazine are very particular about things like that. I bet it will be season 27, and it was season one back in the thing. It's kind of
But
interesting
apparently
where
he said that was because of the deal that Disney made with them,
it's Disney.
because they felt like, yeah,
As
the
far as
American
Disney are
audiences
concerned,
do not know Doctor Who, so they're like, as far as we're concerned, this is the start.
yeah. I mean, this is where you start getting in. Every Star Trek series, to the best of its ability, matches up. Star Trek is fundamentally meant to be, with the odd inconsistency, a consistent whole. So
Yeah.
Enterprise and New Worlds and um, well, maybe no, some of them, some of them are different, and some of them, yeah. But you've
Well,
got the
there is a
classic Trek Next Gen.
canonical timeline, and then you've got the new timeline that was
Yeah,
established from the movies. Yeah.
yeah. So you've got a big chunk which is all consistent. But we have the word franchise. I was sort of saying, someone was saying Doctor Who is a franchise. Saying the word franchise to Doctor Who always feels weird because that's an American word to me. It's a Star Trek word. It's different shows. Kind of Voyager and Deep Space Nine and Next Gen. That's a franchise because it's Star Trek, but it's different chunks. And I think Doctor Who has been referred to as a franchise for a very, very long time, just because it's the same lingo
Well,
as
it's
Star
made
Trek and
billions
Star
for the
Wars.
BBC. Like, it's insane how they keep asking for license payers money when
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
making billions off this franchise. Yeah.
And I think the
It's
thing
like their
about BBC,
version of the Marvel universe in a way.
yeah,
And from
and
Chibnall, we didn't even know if it was coming back or not.
well, that's the thing. I mean, with Chibnall, kind of, you get the impression that he was the only one who wanted to do it, who was also had producer and showrunner experience, and had the
Mm.
name recognition. He was riding on the crest of the Broadchurch wave, and he came in with big ideas. He said, "I want to make the Doctor a woman," and I think that as an idea is perfectly valid because as an alien that can regenerate into anything, and there's a line in the Paul McGann movie where Grace says. Can you become an animal? Can you become different? Or when you regenerate, and McGann says, "Yeah, but only when I die." So it's kind of seeded that there could be a lot of variety in regeneration a long
But they
time
did
ago.
also preface that he said that he was half human,
And the half human,
and
and that's the thing, half human got ditched, and
it
that's
did get ditched. It
partly
was like a throwaway comment, though, so like
that.
they could ditch it because it was a throwaway comment.
Yeah, I mean that was very much the American zeitgeist of Star Trek and kind of general sci-fi at the time. Half human. Logically, to an new American audience, will say, "Well, why does he spend so much time on Earth? Why does he love humans so much? He must be half human." Spock was half human. It's that emotional connection and that core, and an awful lot of what Doctor Who might have become if the Paul McGann series had been a success. The pilot movie was a backdoor pilot. It was only ever made as a movie, but they hoped to make a series. They had all these
Well,
plans which had been
let's
published, and
let's expand on the expanded universe idea of Doctor Who, right?
mm,
Russell T Davies was trying to do his own kind of Marvel Cinematic Universe variation of Doctor Who recently, where he's got the David Tennant Doctor in his back pocket now because they've split him off into like these two variations of the Doctor, which in itself hasn't been explained yet. I'm hoping they're going to go more in depth with it as we continue.
mm.
Um, the second thing was they did this like kind of web series kind of thing with someone that we know, Sue Kemper.
Oh, Doomsday,
It
yes.
kind of, yeah, it kind of started, but then it stopped due to like huge fan backlash, I think, because
Yeah.
people were just really crapping all over it.
Well, this is the
And
thing that
I know Sue. She's a very capable actress.
yeah.
Seems like a very nice person. I've worked with her before. We actually went to the same university.
Oh,
We're both the same alumni. She was there at the same time as I was at St Mary's.
yeah.
And
I
I know her but right now she's kind of on that pedestal where she's a bit more famous. So I'm not really acknowledged as much.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
the thing is, I did a commercial with Suze in 2013 for the Scottish
mm,
government. So I met her there. I thought she was great. I think she's very funny. I think she's a very good actress. Doomsday is just weird. It's tonally very, very odd because you don't know whether you're meant to take it seriously or whether it's like almost like a Blue Peter sketch kind of thing. Is Doom actually a real person or is Doom somebody living in their mum's basement pretending for some kind of reason? And apparently not. Apparently Doom is genuine. I started with Doom with
yeah, because
Doomsday.
Russell T Davis was basically saying that it was supposed to be canon, and there was going to be this whole event where she eventually meets the Doctor, but it just kind of never happened.
Yeah, I think it's an experiment. I think it's seeing what people will look at, what people won't. And like Time Lord Victorious, there are fans who will just watch TV, there are fans who will buy anything, and there are fans who will just try some of the ranges. Some people are really into comics, some people are really into novels, some people are really into the audios, and it's just a it's a good way of sort of giving something to each of those ranges that can become something bigger. So I think Doomsday seems like it was a bit of an experiment. There is apparently a very, very good Big Finish audio which comes near the end, which I haven't yet heard, which I need to. And there
Well,
was,
like Doomsday.
yeah, apparently that's very good. Apparently Caesar's excellence in it. There's a very good cast. So, but I do think they screwed up that to begin with because I think the first one's very badly directed. I don't think it's Caesar's fault. And I think we'll probably see a lot more of that. Um, what I'd love is, I'd love kind of like a big multimedia missing episodes kind of thing, one of the stories from the 60s that was wiped. They could do, they've done animations, they did a live action recreation of one episode at a university, which is on
Mm.
YouTube, which is fantastic. I think there's room to do there, especially if an episode were to get discovered. And, there's a bit of hope that something might turn up for the first time in a few years because there's more film cans being going through. So I think, yeah, some kind of like big multimedia event focused around missing episodes is probably quite clever, with animations, with recons, with audios, comics.
So
I'd
I
love to
have
see.
one more remaining question for you as well. Because like as I said, you're a huge Doctor Who aficionado. You've done a heck of a lot of body of work as well as an actor because you've done it like in such a short time. Would there be any video game character that you would like to play if you had a choice
Oh,
to be in a video game? Because I know you're a big game fan.
yeah, I really, really got into open world games. I was a gamer. I had a Game Boy, I had a SNES. I did various sort of platformers, adventures. I got massively into point and click games when I was a teenager, so I did all of the LucasArts games and Beneath the Steel Sky. And I love city builders like Settlers. Absolutely adored the Settlers. And then I kind of went into a mobile gaming phase where I just wasn't at home very often. I only had a laptop, and I only had I didn't have a console for a little while, and then yeah,
Mm.
in lockdown, I think Horizon Zero Dawn was free on days to play on the PlayStation. We had like a 7-year-old secondhand PS4 that we bought off a friend. I got Assassin's Creed for Ilsa. We loved history. Ilsa, my partner, when we were in lockdown, she got to explore Egypt in Origins, which was, that sense of being trapped in your flat, but you could still travel wherever you wanted on a massive map, in really quite beautiful graphics, because I'd sort of had a gaming period and then stopped, and then another gaming period and then stopped. So my appreciation of the visuals in like last gen and current gen consoles was kind of blown away. So yeah, so I would adore to be in Horizon Zero Dawn and the Horizon kind of thing. I think Aloy is fantastic. The idea of shooting robot dinosaurs with a bow and arrow thrills me childishly, and I think it's a very good
Have you ever
story.
played? There's a game that you might like called Turok Dinosaur Hunter. Have you
Oh,
ever played that?
I know of it. I haven't actually played. I
Yeah.
think it was cheap on
It's
the
like a
PS
guy with a
Store. And
bow and arrow as well. You should really give it a try. I think it would
yeah,
really work with you.
yeah.
So as an actor yourself, you've got another like job coming up recently, right? You said you're going to be doing a play. So tell
Oh
us a bit more
yes.
about that play.
So basically, I it's been a long time since I've done theatre. I haven't actually done anything in
Mhm.
theatre since 2015, just because I ended up I suppose I ended up transitioning to voice acting. I decided, okay, I've done enough theatre. I'm going to focus on voice now. And because, theatre is wonderful, it takes a lot of time up. And it was sometimes cutting into other things as well. And basically, there's not the huge theatre scene in the Netherlands that there is in London. There's not plays on every
Mm.
week. There's not a fringe scene. There's not script reading groups in the same way. But there's a few expats, actors and directors. And so I was sort of, after COVID, it was all a bit lonely. And I slowly started making much more of an effort, kind of last year, really, to try and find people. And it's one of those things where you sort of put things out on forums. You say, is anyone an actor? And you get a lot of people say, oh, my daughter really wants to do that. My son really wants to do that. Or, yeah, I did a school play. Or I've been told I've got a nice voice. And I think I put a post out saying, just for any professional actors, what are you doing about your equity and spotlight? Are you keeping them renewed every year? Or have you
I
fallen
have,
off one
yeah.
of them or both? Yeah.
I've
And
kept on everything, yeah.
I paused a couple of times. Sometimes the finances at the time just didn't work out. And,
I
my
just
situation.
like for me, it's yeah, I'm earning enough to kind of finance it, so I just let it run. I'm
Yeah.
not the kind of person. I remember you were elected at one point, weren't you, with equity?
I was on the local branch committee for the West and Southwest branch, which was lovely because
Yeah.
I was very passionate about doing stuff. I had a conversation with Spotlight over, how they divvy up access to certain castings, and how there's, a lot of things are stacked against anyone who's not with one of the big 10 agents, kind of thing. So
Yeah,
we
of
had
course. It's even
conversations about,
still too hard to basically get into the industry as it is, but as an established actor, because it's got too many have a go actors now who keep saying they don't need to be trained. That kind of
yeah,
bothers me as a trained actor, because I'm
yeah,
like, go to drama school,
yeah,
actually like, or get an acting tutor. Don't don't sit there and pretend that you can do it, because
yeah,
it's not going to look good. You're going to be terrible. You may get a few roles here and there, but I
yeah,
feel like a lot of people were coming in and just winging it, and like, oh, I've done a bit
exactly.
of community theater. But for you, in particular, you've got this like Woman in Black. So tell
Oh,
us a little
yes,
bit
yes.
about that.
So yeah, basically, Woman in Black, absolutely fantastic horror script. Basically, it's with lighting and music and sound and atmosphere. It's
Hmm.
just two of us actors on the stage, and there'll be a director. And we basically we start as an actor and a director going through telling this story, and then we kind of switch characters and tell the story ourselves. There was a film with Daniel Radcliffe, which is okay. It's quite different to the play. They make some decisions which a lot of people don't like in an effort to explain more stuff. But the thing about horror is, it's about atmosphere. It's about leaving questions in your mind. So basically,
Mm.
this is quite a rare sort of genre foray. And yeah, basically, it's a very, very talented actress and director from the UK who now lives in the Netherlands with a Dutch partner. This story happens a lot. There's one English person, one Dutch person come to live in the Netherlands, and they've set
So
up a
this is
theatre company.
exclusively in Dutch, basically in your
Oh
country
no, no, we're not
where
doing
you're
this in
living.
Dutch. We're doing this in English. So this is going to be an English
No, no, I
speaking
mean it's
performance.
English language, but it's going to be in the Netherlands, basically.
It's going to be a few nights in Rotterdam at the Capelletje at the end of September, and so we're just starting rehearsals, and I'm very excited. I've done a lot of sci-fi, a lot of fantasy. I've done a bit of horror, and I'm always up for a bit more horror. I'm up for a challenge. There's a lot of lines to learn, a lot of lines, and I'm a bit older, and social media is a distraction, and also with Fallout, the fantastic Fallout series, which is the most exciting and best thing I loved in ages. I've started like playing all of the Fallout games. So I've downloaded New Vegas, and I've realized I can run it on my laptop. I've downloaded Fallout 76 because I've heard it's not crap anymore, and it turns out it does actually run on the laptop. And now
It
there's the
runs well,
Fallout
yeah.
4. Yeah, there's the Fallout 4 update which just came out last night. So I'm like, I've got three Fallouts on the go,
And Fallout
and
Shelter as well. I
and
remember you
Fallout
telling me you were playing
Shelter
that.
on the phone and the Switch. So yeah, so no, I have to be big, responsible, and learn my lines, and I will learn my
It's a
lines.
process I always do. If I'm studying, what I tend to do is I just put my games away and
Yeah,
I don't touch them until I finish with what I need to do, like my assignments and stuff, which has worked quite well for me, to be honest.
yeah,
Um, The other thing I would like to ask is, because we're running, like, we've got like probably about 5 minutes, 5, 10 minutes left. I want to ask you if you had advice for anybody looking to go into the industry right now, who, because there's a lot of people who want to go, like, my dream is to work in the video games industry as an actor. Um, what would you say to someone just starting out?
Um, well, the thing, I mean, I've auditioned a lot for video games. I played the voice of a parrot in Plot of the Druid, which is a point and click adventure, graphical adventure like Monkey Island on Steam. So I've done a little bit. A lot of it's mocap now. Being in London, even when you're doing voiceovers generally, and you can be anywhere in the world, a lot of it is mocap in studios in London. So you do have to be prepared to travel. It helps if you're in London. They will look at that and they will sometimes decide if you're too far away, that's too complicated. Sometimes it's just attrition. Sometimes it's auditioning, and getting through. I've got a lot of friends who've been in bigger. I've got friends who are in Horizon and in Beyond a Steel Sky and games like that. And it's very very exciting. It's a bucket list thing for me. It's definitely the next thing I'd like to do. But in general, I
Mm,
think the first thing to remember is there are a lot of us. So don't expect to just walk in and then get work every single day, every single week, and pay your rent every single month exclusively from this. Train. Get coaching. I will coach you for very reasonable rates if you want to get in touch and do one-on-one Skype coaching. There are lots of other actors who will train you. Some of them are very, very expensive. Some of them are worth it. So pick who trains you very, very carefully. I'd love it to be me. Um, there's being disciplined, being quick, being able to sight read is very very important, especially lifting stuff on the page. Some people are dyslexic, some people struggle a little bit, and if you are, then you need to put the work in, because you
yeah.
can do it. It is possible, but it's a lot harder, and on the flip side of that, we should all recognize how much hard work people with a neurodiverse issue or a disability, or something factors in, put in. People work their asses off 10 times as hard. um,
Mhm.
so there's that dedication. um, and take it serious, and just be kind of fun. If you're having opinions, send yourself up a little bit. Know when to be humble, know when to, try. Don't do yourself down. There are certainly times where there's been people I could have networked with and connected with, that I've kind of shied away from. There are certainly times where I've shrunk into myself. So it's finding a little bit balance, a little bit of a balance. It's kind of confidence without overconfidence. Give yourself a little bit of support if you're feeling low. Just keep at it and collaborate with friends. Now, when very early on, when strangers say, "Will you come and do my thing?" But I'm not paying you; it's free. It's for exposure. And it's like, "Oh, great! My rent is 800 exposures." Sometimes it's very, you don't want to work with people who just kind of want to take advantage, and you kind of know when people have got money and you know when people haven't. Sometimes it's very obvious that there are genuine creative people out there who just don't have a budget and would like to raise a budget, and they might Kickstarter or something. So pick the people
Mhm.
that you work for in terms of your money and your value very carefully. Don't expect to get full don't expect to get full rates. Expect to do some free stuff. Don't walk in on day one and say, "I am a professional actor," because I say, and I will only work for a large amount of money. You will have to do things for free. You will have to build up a voiceover reel, but pick them carefully. Pick people that won't take advantage of you. And there's people that will use you for free and then they will pay you later when they can. And there are friends. Make friends first, build established contacts, and then do things together. Um, and then get a good show reel. Just be good, just be ready, just be nice to work with, just be fun to work with, know your stuff. It is hard work. It's not easy. It's kind of, we make it sound easy. On the day, if you just walk into a studio and you just watch us doing it, it may look quite easy, but that's come from an awful lot of prep and an awful lot of work to make it. And
One other
that's why you get
thing,
paid. Yeah.
one other thing. Where can we find you? Like, you
Um,
have like a list of links. I'm going to post a list of links of where he is. You're currently going. You're currently going to be at a convention in the
oh,
Netherlands, right?
yes, I'm going to be at the Countdown Studios on the 25th of May in Amsterdam Sloterdijk, which is not that far from the airport. It's very easy
Mhm.
to get to. Fly all the way over. Um, and yeah, so I'm going to be signing with some very cool people. That's for the Movie Stars Live
Mhm.
event, and they have all sorts of people. So it's not just me. You know, I'm a voice actor. There's a wonderful comic artist. Stephen Lee Scott's going to be there, and um, stuntman. Yes, so we'll put all the. Sorry, I'll bring
We'll
up
put all
the.
the information. The information
Yes,
will be on the link. So, Cliff, one last thing I would like to say is it's been a pleasure having you on. I've just looked at it, the time at the moment. We've been on here for 2 hours. I don't want to give everyone like a 3 hour podcast. I would, but it's one of those things
yeah,
where I feel that
there's certainly some stuff you can edit out. I'm really.
well, there's a lot I think we can also expand on. If you guys want to talk politics with Cliff, I'll be more than happy to have him on again, and we can have a political episode. But in terms of everything, I think that you are like in my opinion, a great talent and someone I would like
Thank
to
you.
have back on here again, where we can talk a little bit more about like your loves, your likes and dislikes, for instance, because there is a lot about his love of Fallout, the games you used to play as well. I think would be important, but I do think we've kind of made this a Doctor Who episode, which has been great too.
It's fine.
Um, it's been great, and I would like to say it's been a pleasure. For ladies and gentlemen, if you've got any more questions, leave the comments below. I can always do another episode with Cliff, and we can direct your questions to him. Do a nice little Q&A. And that's a big, great thank you to every one of you who's been patient with us as well, because I've been trying and trying to get this right.
Yeah,
So
one was my
there,
fault. I literally forgot one time. I'm so sorry.
but it's also me too. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, this has been Michael Burhan with Cliff Chapman, of course, letting you know that I've got gameplay. Have you?
I've got gameplay. Bye.
Let me make sure that I stop recording and that it uploads. After stopping, you'll receive an email notification.